Why does God make us wait? Now, this is something that I have asked the Lord. I'm sure many of you have asked God the same question. And I think it's a really fair question, because so often in our lives, maybe God has given us a vision, or we know something was spoken over our lives, or we know that something is coming, but for some reason it feels like the waiting period is just taking so incredibly long. Maybe you feel stagnant. But we see the same thing in scripture. So that's really encouraging. You have the story of Joseph. You know, God had given Joseph a dream. And so Joseph knew that he was destined for amazing things in the kingdom. But yet it took so much for that dream to be fulfilled on the other side. He ended up having to wait over 14 years before he could actually see that vision that God had given him come to pass. And the same with David. You know, David was anointed as a young man, but it took like 15 years in order for David to actually be put in a position where the promise over his life had come to pass. And so, you know, why does God make us wait? You know, and that is something that I had prayed on, and I had asked God, and, you know, waiting does two things. Waiting either produces trust or it produces disobedience. So often throughout scripture, what we see is God telling someone to do something, or a promise again being made over someone's life. And God saying, you know, wait on me, wait on me. You know, Abraham, you're going to be a father of many nations. Just wait on me, wait on me. And then, you know, you get tired of waiting. So then you start to do things that, that isn't waiting on God. You do it on your own strength, right? So waiting does two things, right? It either produces trust or produces disobedience. And as I was sitting there praying on that, I'm like, yeah, that's true. I'm either going to stand on the promise of God and say, Lord, I trust you despite what I see. I know that you are true. I know that you are good. I know that you are faithful. Or I'm just going to say, okay, that's cool and all, but let me figure out how I'm going to take care of this on my end. Like, what is it that I'm going to do to make sure that this thing gets done? Or perhaps you started off faithful. You started off trusting God, but then you've gotten weary in that. Like, Lord's taking too long. He's taking too long. I'm just going to, you know, do things on my own strength. Maybe the God is taking so long because, you know, he really wants me to do it. And so I find that that's really interesting. If you really think about it, how will we ever know the faithfulness of God without the waiting period? Like, just think about that, right? Like, how would we ever know that God is faithful to show up if we never have to wait on him? And that really spoke to me, because I was really thinking about what the faithfulness of God looks like, because faithfulness is experienced, right? Like, so we don't experience the faithfulness of God if we never have to wait on him. And so I hope that that encourages you. And if you're in a waiting period, maybe God's given you a vision. Maybe there's been something that was promised over your life. Maybe you know big things are ahead, but you've just grown weary in the waiting. I want to encourage you this morning to stay in pursuit of God. Stay trusting him. Don't do anything that is disobedient or something that goes against what has already been promised or goes against the work of the Lord. And just know and trust that God is faithful. And we will never know him to be faithful unless we have an opportunity to wait on him to fulfill his promises in our lives.